had the equinox this week, and that means spring has finally started to arrive. And it also means it's time to have a look at the month ahead for October. It does look like a deceptively quiet month in South Africa's horoscope. And of course, this is the month before a big election, so it's definitely not as quiet as it seems. Apart from all the usual behind the scenes stuff going on, there's a lot of in front of the scenes stuff going on, but this looks pretty different than what we've seen in the month before elections in previous years. Normally there's been massive, very public fighting and attacking and all of those things that we always see amongst politicians before elections. That side of the story seems to be a little bit toned down. Perhaps it's because the ruling party lacks some of the bravado that it took into previous elections, perhaps knowing that they're in a much more vulnerable position than they usually are, or they usually feel before it comes round to the time of an election. And perhaps it's because there's enough else going on that people really just have to deal with going on behind the scenes. In South Africa's horoscope, it's like we're caught between two things. We are in a position where some things are beginning to change, but actually some might call this position between a rock and a hard place. It's not just a final transition into something fantastic. And over the next many months, we could say easily over the next six months, we're walking a very careful tightrope in terms of where the country stands internationally and where the country stands in terms of ourselves and its own people. Certainly the image of the country is changing a lot at this time, and that's something that perhaps the president needs to be more aware of, and perhaps also goes some way to explain why our international partners don't exactly see us the same way. You know, people are quick to say, why wasn't South Africa taken off the UK red list? And while there's a lot of good reason why scientifically South Africa should have been taken off that red list, it's also clear from the chart that South Africa isn't viewed in a very positive light as a country so much anymore. And so there are other political forces that affect how we get by in the world. And one of those is, of course, how we're seen as a nation, not just the science that the UK likes to talk about. And perhaps this is an opportunity for the governing party to reflect on that and realize that their infighting and all the other things they've been up to, the corruption that they've been guilty of in terms of running the country, is beginning to strongly affect the nature of our image. One of the strongest facts of this month's chart is how our image in the world is beginning to change. So South Africa needs to work at presenting a better image and a strong and better image, and that's also in terms of things to do with the pandemic and our management of it, and with the vaccination. While our management of the pandemic has largely gone well and been seen as quite well, we know that vaccination figures remain low and the vaccination program remains slow, not really for any other reason other than the difficulty in getting people to take up the opportunity for the vaccination and the generally low-key program that the government has run to try and get people to understand why they should. And that is beginning to have a bigger effect on us and on many of our international relationships. So all that behind the scenes stuff, which usually bodes badly for South Africa in the past, back in the Zuma years, actually looks to adjust some things and help us get ourselves perhaps out of this stuck place between the rock and the hard place. One way or another, our image is beginning to change. This changes a lot of our foreign relations. We have new and different allies and changes in our allies, and that might be also one of the ongoing effects on how connections between ourselves and other countries have changed in these times, and something perhaps we haven't thought that much about, but of course which is inevitable. So something that perhaps we need to think about. Certainly travel does remain a difficult situation in the country, and that's where the international relationships get down to our ordinary level, and it does look like we're still going to be quite stuck on many fronts in that regard. But nevertheless, as I say, as we continue to create new allies and shift some of our international relationships, perhaps that's one of the big effects of this pandemic period. In the long run, we have a somewhat different tourist profile and dependency on other countries and so on. One of the things of the arguments about the red list has exposed is the extent to which we heavily rely on the UK and on other foreign tourists to support our economy. And perhaps a bit of a rebalancing and a restructuring is going with regards to that. It does look like, in fact, the pandemic is costing us a lot more than is obviously visible. You know, a lot of money was supposed to be put towards it. We've all seen how much of that money was stolen in corruption, and we're forgetting about, so now what about the money that was supposed to be spent? And we can see a lot of trouble with regards to that. We know our dependence on the IMF is increasing as a result of that, and will continue to do so. It does look like there might be new contracts or arrangements with regards to, be it the IMF or some other external source of money. It does look like financially South Africa is becoming increasingly beholden to other outside sources and increasingly spending money on the epidemic. So hopefully the more people get their acts together and get themselves vaccinated, and the more we can actually get control of the pandemic in terms of our hospitals, our graveyards, and the people suffering in between, in the end we can also bring the cost down. That is an incredible fiscal cost to the country that we need to think about as well in terms of economic recovery. We know a lot about that in terms of the job losses and the damage to the economy done by the various lockdowns, but the chart is saying we're actually talking about the bottom line. Cold hard cash is needed to fight this pandemic. We're running out of it. We actually need to put ourselves together and get on top of the pandemic for many reasons. The good thing is that in terms of perhaps the upcoming election and so on, there does seem to be increasing positivity in the country with regards to our sense of going forward. And although we're only going to look at the election itself in next month ahead, we are seeing some kind of optimism arising out of South Africans feeling that they can actually make some kind of impact at this very critical time, especially since President and his party seem to be taking a lower key approach than usual. I've said it before, Ramaphosa's low key approach is mostly about keeping out of any major actions or decisions he needs to take and preserving himself and his position in that party. That's also where he finds himself between a rock and a hard place at this time. So it's a very slow, careful, tenuous month going forward as we lead up to those elections. As we get very, very close to the end of the month, it does seem to be much more chaos, and perhaps we're going to see violence or unrest shortly before the election as we start approaching that and things suddenly start reaching ahead. But for the most part, this is a time of putting ourselves together, realizing what's really important, where the real practical priorities are. People can stop fighting about ideas and get onto practicalities to get ourselves stable and secure, so that with the outcome of the election in the month ahead, we can go ahead with a better sense of leadership and hopefully with better outcomes. Aries, this is a bit of a behind the scenes month for you. There's been a lot going on in recent times, and it's time for you to step back a little bit. Maybe you need to regroup and strategize and plan and plot the time ahead. Maybe you just need to pull yourself back together from all sorts of different things that have been happening over the last while. That means it's a great time to take some time for yourself, to concentrate on your spiritual life, your personal life in that way, to even spend some time alone, which is a great way to take care of your spiritual life at this time. It does look as if, of course, as an Aries, you're ready to rush into the next thing, and you are cautioned this month against acting impulsively. Something that comes so natural to you, it might be hard to do anything about it. But just remember, if this is a time for stepping back and strategizing, then any impulse is likely to work against you. So think it through before you go there and wait a while. Some of your urges and ambitions at this time are not going to serve you. Put your energies into getting yourself strong, getting your foundation strong again, and also in dealing with stuff that you've swept under the carpet for far too long. It's time to take action on things that have been lingering. Taurus, a whole new approach is needed for many things at the moment, and maybe especially your relationships. For some of you, that means it's time to actually stand up and say what it is that you need or that's bugging you or whatever, because otherwise you might just explode and do something you didn't really want to do at this time. And for others, it really just means you need to actually get the relationship into the track you need it. It might not be about feeling that you can't say anything, but you need to be honest with yourself about, is this relationship really serving you? Is it going the way you need the relationship to go? And maybe it's time for a little bit more dialogue and communication with your partner. You could be kind of like on two ships that are busy passing, too busy each dealing with your own things, and need to communicate better. That can also be true for your business relationships at the moment, and there you need to be especially careful that you're not being taken advantage of in some way or coming off second best. It's important at this time not to be too indecisive. In terms of your work, you need to be clear, decisive, say what it is that you need or what you want to happen, and then handle the consequences from there. That'll put you into a much stronger position. Gemini's financial matters might be demanding a lot of your attention this month, and it looks like you need to distribute your funds and how you're spending them a little bit better. It seems as if a lot of what your expenses are about at this time are things which are not bringing any value back to you. Nothing is coming back from everything that you're putting out. So it's time to actually get your house in order, eliminate unnecessary expenses, and notice the little leaks that are all going on unnecessarily, especially where you are giving or spending money that isn't even for you in the first place. There are also signs at this time that you might not be feeling entirely confident about something or about yourself, and you need to start looking where in your life you can draw some of the reassurance from that reminds you who you are, what you're good at, and what you're worth. If you really want to get on top of financial circumstances, the best way to do that is to make sure you're collecting all your bills and from money that people owe to you, and make sure that you're charging enough or demanding enough for what it is that you do. There is a strong link between how we feel about ourselves and how we assert what is due to us in the world. Time to bolster up that link, Geminis. Cancerians, you might be good at conveying your emotions and your emotional needs, but you're not so great at saying what it is that you need. And it looks like there's a little bit of a conflict going on right now between what you're thinking or saying and what you're feeling. And this could be very confusing for people around you, could be confusing for your partner, but more worryingly, of course, can cause a certain amount of miscommunication to happen. So this is your time to be clear for yourself what it is you're feeling and finding ways to put that across in ways that you can be sure you are being understood, rather than getting frustrated and feeling a little sulky. It's also to do with the people around you other than your one-to-one partnerships. That might be relatives, people close to you, or just people in your environment. And this would be a good time just to spend a little more time alone. Not that you haven't been doing a lot of that already, because Cancerians like to do that, and it looks like you are in a little bit of a withdrawn mode. But it's time to kind of just know where you stand and be clear for yourself, so that in all your relationships you can make your feelings properly felt. There's also great input from new people, people that you're not that close to, people in important places, might be giving you a bit of a boost at that moment. Use that boost to be clear on yourself and to communicate your feelings more clearly with your partner. You know, spring is when things start getting warmer. Leos, of course, love warmth and the sun. And this is a time to start getting in touch with what makes you feel all warm inside again. That's family and people that you love, and things that you love, and places that you love. Leo, it's your month of love. And this is about you loving stuff, not relationships where we get up and down and battered around by our feelings, but the things that come from your heart, the things that you've loved since you were a child, the people that you've known since you were a child, and the places that you've known since that time as well. It's a way of reconnecting back to your authentic self, your original self, and it's not even so much about that, just about love, about just being able to open your heart. It's your open your heart month, Leo. And that can also mean finding new things that you love and even finding new people that you love. One thing that is cautioned against in your chart is bottling up negative emotions at this time. It's also time to make sure that you don't unintentionally let the aggression out and blow something up. There's a lot of love and feelings from the past being stirred around. Don't take it out on people around you at this time. Let the positive feelings of love be what you express into the world. Virgos, it's also a month about what it is that you love for you, looking at the things that you love to do the most. Virgos, this is a month for that, and also making sure that the circumstances around you support that. It is an action month for you. It's a great opportunity to get things going the way that you want them to be, so that, especially in your working life, you'll be able to go forward, but also other areas of your life. It's kind of like it's time to bring things back into balance in some way. And one of the ways to do that is from your environment. This is a good opportunity to get rid of negative influences, people and things in your space, and even the place itself. It might be time to reorganize your office, and if you're lucky enough to find different premises to work in, especially if you're still working from home, maybe you just need to straighten out some of that sense of space that you need to get from right now. But you need to be in a feeling of a place that you like, doing what you like, amongst people that you like, and doing things that you're good at, doing things that you've been able to do since you were little. That's really what to be focusing on this time, and that's what will bring your whole life back into balance. Libra, of course, your sign is always challenged by finding the right balance between things, and this is one of those times when you're going to need to concentrate on what's needed in your relationship and your personal areas of life by you, because in your professional area of life there's very little that you can do. It's very out of balance there. At this time you've got to give of yourself, give of your resources, give of your talents. Hopefully you're getting recompensed in the right kind of way, but for the most part in professional life there's very little that you can be decisive or firm about. In personal life, if you're too decisive or firm, it will swing right the other way. That's where you've got to find a balance. The net result is that in so many things you might be feeling unheard, not having an opportunity to be yourself or to do what you want, and it's very important to find whatever opportunities you can to do that. Make sure that you get to do some stuff that's just stuff that you love, that is for you, so that you don't feel so put upon by others at this time. And make sure that in your relationship you are being heard, and that you're feeling that at least there you have some agency, because in your working life at the moment you just don't. That'll bring you back into balance. Scorpio, this month is all about relationships for you, and for the most part that's a good thing. For those of you in relationships, this is a great opportunity to bring some things back into balance the easy way. You've been a little bit caught up in yourself and things that have been going on in your own life, and this is a great time to give energy back to the relationship and back to your partner. I mean, this really looks like a great month for sensual pleasures and for really great connections. Even if you aren't in a relationship, a lot of those connections can be found in friends and people around you that are just good connections, and where you still get to feel good, simple pleasures in the case of those relationships. On the subject of simple pleasures, make sure you're also getting them elsewhere in your life. Things that you enjoy to do and places that you enjoy going are all going to feed your soul at this time. For many Scorpios, this is also a time when your chances of meeting someone are very high. So if you're not in a relationship right now, Opening your heart in the way that I've been talking about is really going to give you the opportunity to connect with new people, and it does look like there's a great chance of connecting and making a stronger, lasting connection with someone you really like. Sagittarians, you might have to face a few things you don't want to face at this time, perhaps some personal demons, or more likely just some debts or some unfinished business you haven't been giving enough attention. But this is a great opportunity to get them out of the way and to sort out lingering things that have actually been draining you in some way. This is also a good time to set up new interdependent relationships. I mean, kind of getting yourself into more debt. But it does look like this is a month where you can rely on others for input, for resources. Perhaps that's money, or perhaps that's other resources that you need. And all of that is really going to take you forward. This is a great month for business and generally your professional life, as well as ambitions which are not necessarily related to your professional self. But you do need to put them out there and get things working in the world at this time. It's a time to gather all those resources I've been talking about and actually turn them into something and make them happen. You are being seen at this time. People are looking, they're open-hearted and open-minded, and they're willing to go along with whatever it is that you're putting out there. So get things started, take the initiative, make it happen, and you'll find everyone coming along for the ride, and you succeed. Capricorn, you might also be relying on external resources at this time, but it isn't a good time to be relying on those. And in fact, you need to be cautious because there might be people or external resources that you've been relying on that aren't going to happen. So you actually need to think of a few plan Bs. This is in fact a good month for strategizing and re-strategizing, creating new strategies, all of those kind of things. So it's also a good time to really just redraw your boundaries about what you're doing, what comes from you, and what you depend on from others, and what you're doing for them, because you need to recreate a sense of why you're doing what you're doing. A lot of things or people are letting you down at the moment, and this could kind of throw you off course, and you could lose sense of why you're doing what it is that you're doing. So Plan B is for everything this month. It's time to redecide and redefine what it is that you're doing and why it is that you're doing it. You're going to have to do some background work as well. This is a great time to acquire some new skills, to do some necessary research, to find new information that you might need in order to help you get along with your own path. It might even be a time where that information is some personal, spiritual, or psychological information that can just put you firmly back on your track. Aquarians, it may well look like nothing much is happening, and it may even look like some of your plans are just not coming together at this time and won't come together. But in fact, the opposite is true. They are all coming together, and it is one of those times where that's going to be pretty much at the last minute. So you've just got to allow yourself to be patient, to breathe, and to allow things to fall into place naturally on their own. In fact, that's going to be true of many things in your life at this time. Many things seem to be neatly falling into place on their own, and you would imagine you could just sit back and watch it happen. That's not a good time to do this. You actually could use this opportunity to plan and to make some new directions and goals going forward from the successes of this time. You can't keep moving around randomly relying on luck and chance, but you actually need to build the momentum that is gradually building for you and work at going forward with it. So that means a good time to set new goals, create new plans, continue to assume that what you're doing right now is leading to success by the end of the month, and then going forward from there, how that's going to be able to help you create some new goals that you can rely on some new successes in the months ahead. Pisces, also a month of success for you. You really need to get everything on the track and going towards your goals, because the more you put out there right now, the better your results are going to be. I mean, literally, this is a good month for money or any other positive outcomes from your efforts. The smallest effort could go a long way. You can even rely a little bit on luck in that case, but this doesn't happen without you taking some very clear initiative. In fact, this is also a great time to be looking at some of your bigger goals in life. Pisceans sometimes get a little bit lost in fantasy and imagined outcomes and imagined ideal worlds that they're living in, but you can actually make something real happen if you start thinking about some goals and turning them into reality. Some of those bigger goals that you've had in your life, this is a time when you'll be able to turn them into reality a lot more readily. So that does mean you need to pull all your energies together, your creative energy is strong at this time, and actually make something happen. It does look like there could be the influence or input of someone around you who can really make things work for you, or who could be a good inspiration for you. So take that on board, accept the help of others at this time. It's not a time to chill back and sit back and go with the flow. It's a time to go forward because it's happening for you this month, Pisces. Hope it's a good month for you. Don't forget, register to vote. Don't forget, get that vaccine. And I'll see you here next week at the usual time.